Everybody knows that something is going terribly wrong with the U.S. economy. Government officials and the media can no longer fool the population saying that things are getting better because behind their manufactured numbers and lies, there is a harsh reality we're all seeing with our very eyes. We don't need them to tell us that the economy is recovering because we know we're only getting deeper inside the mess they created. Interest rates are soaring, mortgages have never been this expensive, inflation is still raging, and our purchasing power is being squeezed from all fronts. Right now, the American people is struggling to afford their most basic needs. Parents are tired and frustrated because they can't provide for their children as they used to. Workers are beyond exhausted because no matter how hard they try, the cost of living keeps going up and they can never keep up. There's nothing they can say to make us believe we're on the right path as a nation. We can feel it in our bones that we are not. Today, we bring you some eye-opening facts about what's truly happening to our economy for you to show anyone who doubts more pain is ahead. Here are 15 sure signs the U.S. economy is finished. Number 1, Americans are turning to gardening and hunting to be able to have food on their table. Food prices have risen more than 28% since the pandemic, with some staples such as eggs and butter rising by more than 40%. Now, U.S. consumers are spending more on food than they have in over 3 decades. A new report by the Wall Street Journal exposed that this situation is getting so extreme that many people are being forced to rely on hunting and gardening practices that were common during the Great Depression just to be able to feed their families. Now that's the case with Nancy Randall and her family of 6. To save money, the family is planting and harvesting their own food. They eat the deer they hunt and the fish they catch, typically bringing home 8 deer a year, which they freeze and process into venison and tamales, the Journal reported. Similarly, Bernard Brothman, a retired HR executive, told the outlet that he has started a community garden. He's been expanding his crop to help local residents supplement their grocery store produce. As of June, U.S. consumers are spending nearly 12% of their disposable income on food, and that is more than they have since 1991. 2. Housing prices are 24 times more expensive than they were in the past generation. While our parents and grandparents had the chance to build wealth over the years through their home equity, purchasing a home today seems nearly impossible for most Americans. That's because housing prices have ballooned over the past 6 decades, and higher mortgage rates are only making things more complicated for prospective buyers. Data released by Clever shows that home prices have risen significantly faster than inflation. On the other hand, wage growth is essentially flatlined. In fact, if home prices increased at the same rate as inflation since 1963, the median price of a typical house in the U.S. would be $177,511 in 2024. But in reality, the cost of a typical house in the U.S. is nearing $500,000. Now, at the moment, the median price for a home in the U.S. is $412,778, and that's from Redfin. While inflation is 10 times higher now than 60 years ago, home prices are 24 times more expensive, but annual incomes have only doubled, experts pointed out. Today, it's harder for adults to buy homes than it was for their parents' generation, said Matt Brannon, a data writer at Clever and the author of the report. With that said, we can surely understand why current housing affordability makes 64.2% of owners and renters have negative feelings about the economy. 3. According to new projections, your purchasing power will likely decline over the next 5 years. Making ends meet has been a struggle for millions of households over the past 5 years. Unfortunately, a new study forecasts that things will only get worse in the near future. MoneyWise researchers reported that of the 20 most common jobs in America, 19 are expected to face a salary decrease after adjusting for inflation by 2028. If things don't change soon, the pain and pressure of inflation, rising cost of living, and soaring housing costs will lead to a significant reduction in purchasing power for Americans in nearly every occupation and industry, said MoneyWise research analyst Nick Rizzo. Since 2019, 97% of occupation salaries have failed to keep up with inflation, the personal finance platform exposed. Researchers analyzed data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Federal Housing Agency, and Redfin to find the average salaries have fallen 8.2% as home prices rose an average of 56%. 4. Inflation is forcing people to deplete their savings accounts at a pace not seen since the Lehman collapse and the 2008 financial crisis. By now, you've probably seen, heard, or read an article where even the CEOs of the biggest companies in America, like Walmart and Home Depot, are lamenting the sudden collapse in consumer purchasing power. Experts with Zero Hedge recently observed some reasons behind this trend by analyzing official data released by the Federal Reserve. Now, they found that over the past 12 months, higher prices fueled by inflation led millions of Americans to withdraw their funds from their savings accounts. In September, officials reported that the U.S. personal savings rate had collapsed while consumer credit further slowed, leaving consumers ever more strapped for actual cash and equity, according to the experts. Now, last month, the national personal savings rate dropped from over 5% in August to just 2.9% at the end of September. That is the lowest since the Lehman bankruptcy. In just 1 year, it looks like all the excess savings from COVID are long gone. And now total credit card debt is at an all-time high, while the personal savings rate is at a record low, the experts noted. In other words, without the support of credit and savings while coping with soaring prices for food, rents, mortgages, gas, other staples, Americans are seeing their buying power shrink further with each passing month. 5. At this point, the economy is in such rough shape that even Dollar General customers seem to be running out of money. Discount stores usually cater to lower-income communities by offering a wide variety of products at affordable price points. With prices ranging from $1 to $10, Dollar General profit margins are incredibly thin compared to other retail giants like TJ Maxx, Aldi, Costco. But by keeping prices low, Dollar General typically generates a higher sales volume, and that helps it to boost its bottom line and keeps the company afloat. Unfortunately, conditions are deteriorating for the discount retailer in 2024 as it struggles with even lower profits and slumping sales at the same time, suggesting its lower-income customer base is getting increasingly cash-strapped. In fact, last month, after the company slashed its sales and profit outlook for the full year, its shares tumbled by 25%, resulting in an even bigger financial loss for the chain. The CEO said, "While we believe the softer sales trends are partially attributable to a core customer who feels financially constrained, we know the importance of controlling what we can control," said CEO Todd Vasos in a statement. Well, the consumer slowdown is flashing a dire warning for the U.S. economy, and it's threatening to push many businesses to the brink of bankruptcy. 6. The lack of consumer spending is hitting the restaurant industry particularly hard. We've just ended the fourth quarter. Bankruptcies among restaurant chains, operating companies, and large franchisees are already nearly double what they were in 2023. In September, Jonathan Carson, co-CEO of bankruptcy services and technology firm Stretto, said there had been 17 such Chapter 11 filings in the sector compared to only 9 at the same period last year. He expects the trend to continue. In this situation, a challenging economic environment, post-pandemic recovery issues, rising labor costs, changing consumer habits, and inflation have caused more restaurants to struggle in 2024, Carson told Fox Business in an interview, stressing those issues have impacted several sectors of the economy. The numbers are shocking, and those numbers are rising. And higher interest rates don't help when it comes to the financial health of everyday Americans, Carson said, adding that the consumer is in a rough spot. 7. Well, look, it's no wonder why nearly 20% of Americans are currently unable to meet their monthly debt payments. When the cost of everyday necessities becomes way too expensive, many people inevitably start to fall behind on their monthly bills, and that's particularly true for loans and other debt payments. According to a new Harris Poll survey, almost 2 in 10 Americans are not making their debt payments on time every month, all thanks to the explosive growth of the cost of living in the United States. For young workers, the situation seems to be even more complicated, as roughly 30% they say their pay isn't enough to cover those payments. Kimberly Palmer, a personal finance expert at NerdWallet, highlights that the majority of Americans are spending more on housing and essentials in 2024 than they have at any other period over the last 4 decades. She noted that the Fed's current monetary policy is hurting people's finances really hard right now, saying it's just been unsustainable. And so people really get to the point where they say, hey, I cannot make these debt payments while still buying my essentials like food and housing, which of course you need to prioritize those essentials above all else, said Palmer. Now, as a result of the increasing rate of delinquencies and defaults on loan payments, many banks are being forced to limit access to credit for both U.S. consumers and businesses, consequently causing a slowdown in consumption that will likely be reflected on GDP numbers by the end of this fiscal year. Even worse, a worryingly large number of financial institutions are at risk of insolvency and failure due to drying cash reserves amid lower savings rates and rising debt levels. 8. On top of that, student loan debt has jumped by over 40% and has surpassed $1 trillion in 2024. A Pew Research Center analysis of official data revealed that the massive increase in the cost of higher education has led the national student loan debt load to hit $1.6 trillion in June, meaning that Americans now own 42% more than they did a decade earlier. Most of us have grown up believing that going to college would land us in high-paying jobs, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. According to the analysis, about a third, or 35% of those aged 25 to 39 who have at least a bachelor's degree and outstanding student loan debt say the benefits of their degree were not worth the lifetime financial costs. Today, 1 in 4 U.S. adults under the age of 40 carry student loan debt. From those, 31% believe they will never be able to pay off their debt. 9. The national car loan debt is even bigger than the student loan debt, and auto repossessions are spiking. With average new car prices still hovering about $50,000, buying a new vehicle has become a luxury only affluent Americans can afford. You can't even buy a single new car for less than $20,000 these days. If wages had kept up with the rising cost of a new car, that wouldn't be such a big problem, but of course that didn't happen. And many people need cars. They need cars to drive to work, to pick up their kids at school, run errands. Especially for those folks who live in rural areas, having a car can be an absolute necessity. That's why many people have gotten loans that were actually way too expensive for them. The situation has become so extreme that car loans have passed student loans and are now the second largest debt that Americans hold, only behind mortgages. As a consequence, the number of car repossessions in the U.S. is going through the roof in 2024. In the second quarter, they climbed by almost 25% compared to 2023 levels, the highest jump since the pandemic forced millions out of their jobs and led to a wave of loan defaults. And that's according to CNBC, citing a report by Cox Automotive. Now, this trend is a signal that individuals are hurting financially, as they normally occur when a driver is several months behind on their car payments. 10. Large businesses are declaring bankruptcy by the thousands. Statistics released by the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts reveal that annual bankruptcy filings totaled 486,613 in the year ending June 2024, compared with 418,724 cases in the previous year. In all, business filings rose by 40.3% this year as operational costs continue to mount and sales numbers disappoint. The consumer discretionary category has seen the highest rate of bankruptcies, with retailers and fast food franchisees leading the trend, given that Americans have been seeking value and cutting back on non-essentials. Now, industrial and healthcare sectors are right behind, registering over 15,000 bankruptcies year over year. Consumer staples, technology, and finance round the top 6 categories with the highest rates of bankruptcies in 2024, according to data from the S&P Global. 11. Because of all that, U.S. banks are closing hundreds of locations to cut on costs. Facing a rising wave of delinquencies and defaults, while deposit outflows are drying their cash reserves, many financial institutions are doing everything they can to cut down on costs and to remain operational. That includes closing hundreds of brick-and-mortar branches that have become way too costly to maintain. In the last week of August alone, major banks have shuttered more than 40 locations as the local branch bloodbath intensified. Chase, Wells Fargo, and Santander were among the banks who closed locations during that period. Bank of America led the way, notifying the regulator they would be removing 12 of their local branches from use. Now, these companies are among the most profitable in the country, but still, fears of difficult times are prompting bankers to act before it's too late. So far this year, more than 550 locations have been closed, forcing customers to rely on online banking services only. Now, the measure is also a way to avoid bank runs. The downside is that if online systems go down for some reason, millions of people will struggle to access their funds and get the cash they need. 12. In August, job cuts jumped by over 190%, and hiring fell to its lowest level since 2005. Challenger Gray & Christmas, they're an outplacement firm headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, reported that in the month of August, employers announced 75,891 cuts, which rose from 25,885 cuts announced in the previous month. So that marked a whopping 193% increase from July. That was the highest August total for job cuts since 2009, with the exception of August 2020, pandemic year of course. 76,456 layoffs were recorded, the firm noted. August's surge in job cuts reflects growing economic uncertainty and shifting market dynamics, said Andrew Challenger, the company's senior vice president, in the report. Companies are facing a variety of pressures, from rising operational costs to concerns about a potential economic slowdown, leading them to make tough decisions about workforce management, he added. In the first half of the year, U.S. businesses announced a total of 536,421 job cuts. Moreover, the report also highlighted that hiring plans have fallen to their lowest total since the firm began tracking this data back in 2005. U.S. employers have announced 79,697 hiring plans, down 41% from the 135,980 plans recorded over the same period last year. The previous lowest total through August occurred in 2008, when 80,387 hiring plans were announced, the firm pointed out. Simply put, hiring plans haven't been this low since the global financial crisis. 13. Things are so bad that even the nation's fastest growing sector is conducting mass layoffs. The tech industry has seen an impressive growth since 2020, generating billions in market capitalization for companies like Amazon, Alphabet, Apple, Google, Tesla, and more. But it seems that a day of reckoning has arrived for tech companies as they continue to report more job cuts this month. Last month, more than 39,500 workers in the industry lost their jobs as over 40 companies, including big names like Intel, IBM, and Cisco, as well as numerous smaller startups, announced layoffs. To date, more than 136,000 tech workers have been laid off by 422 companies in 2024, indicating a major upheaval in the sector. 14. One of the richest men in America seems to be bracing for a stock market crash. economic indicators are signaling an extended recessionary period has just begun. Now, with consumer demand going down, the cost of doing business going up, hundreds of overvalued stocks set to face a major correction, even some of the wealthiest market players have seemingly started to prepare for the worst. Just a few weeks ago, billionaire Warren Buffett started to dump loads of stocks in preparation for what is coming. He made a significant part of his $144 billion fortune in the stock market, and the fact that he's now pulling out of the market at a feverish pace should come as a warning for many investors. On Friday, stocks, they retreated from their records after geopolitical tensions sparked fears of disruptions in the flow of oil. Up until now, Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway sold over 100 million Apple shares and an additional 390 million shares across the tech sector in anticipation of a disastrous crash. And 15, almost half of all Americans say 2024 has been the most stressful year of their lives financially, with a flurry of negative headlines about layoffs and rising consumer prices. Americans across all generations report finding it hard to see a silver lining. The truth is that nothing induces as much stress as managing money problems, a Market Watch poll has shown. About 64% of Americans are experiencing some level of financial fatigue. That's a sense of burnout or exhaustion from dealing with finances. Also, 47% say they've reached a financial breaking point this year, with about 1 in 3 saying they avoid looking at their checking account balance out of fear. Nearly 9 in 10 respondents, or 88%, reported feeling financial stress right now, and 65% stated their finances are the most stressful aspect of their life. So, if you're finding it harder to manage your finances right now, you're definitely not alone. Look, none of this is supposed to be happening in the world's richest country. Our leaders have failed us, and the data we just reported should serve as a wake-up call for everyone who thinks the worst is over. Don't be mistaken. This crisis has just started, and the coming months will be decisive for our future. Thank you very much for watching.